Hi, everybody. Dr. Misty, thank you so much for joining today on Wellness Wednesday. So, today I want to talk about why depression is not your fault. Okay. Um, so, especially in a time of, you know, the stress levels that we have right now um, with Corona, really, I want to really emphasize um, how much people with depression or PTSD can really feel a level of shame that is not necessarily for them to carry. Okay. So if this resonates with you, please share with friends and family now. The levels of depression and suicide are literally, you know, going through the roof as we speak, especially heading into another winter season. If you are living in colder climates, there's people who automatically get seasonal depression. So let's talk about some of the underlying causes of depression and how you can help yourself. Okay. So, what I wanted to do was show you a test actually that is really powerful because it almost takes it out of your mind. People who are depressed can tend to have almost like self shaming and self beating, especially if you have PTSD and the depression is part of that. Um, so let me just show you something here to kind of take that weight off of your shoulder, especially if anybody has placed the shame weight on you for having depression. Let me help you take that off. Okay. So we're gonna share screen. Hold on one second here. Let's see. Okay. I apologize. So I'm going to bring up this report. All right. Let me see if I can share it from here. Bear with me. All right, here we go. Okay. So this looks kind of like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but just bear with me. Okay. So this is an example report. It's a urine test. It's a patient that has depression, behavior, high anxiety. So here we're really looking at a urine screen for neurotransmitters. Okay. So this is really like kind of the breakdown of some of the metabolites of those neurotransmitters in the urine. Okay. So a neurotransmitter is things in your central nervous system and part of your biochemistry that helps to your brain to operate at a functioning level. So helps to modulate mood, it helps to um, modulate energy levels, things like that. So it's important to understand that this isn't necessarily just a person's emotional fault that they're stuck in this rut. There literally could have a ton of physiological abnormalities going on beneath the surface. And so when people say like um, there's a chemical imbalance, and they go on medication for depression, which I'm also not shaming, by the way, because I will tell you right now that I have had three different periods in my life where I've had been on an antidepressant. So if you are right now, it's okay. Okay. So this is more on the lines of sometimes the antidepressants will kind of like, they just throw one at you, not knowing what's going to work for you or not. Okay. And more than that, I'm going to help you guys understand how this can provide you more information on understanding what's the best choice for you going forward. And if there's another issue that needs to be addressed, right? Because we're not just looking at the what. Biochemical and chemical imbalance doesn't is a thing, by the way. But also it's important to ask why. Why is it a thing? Why is it a thing? What's happening to that person? Because in general, we are not meant to have those types of imbalances. We are meant to thrive as human beings, right? So let's look at this a little bit. So this is basically a bunch of different neurotransmitters. Okay. Dopamine is really big and specific part of the body and the brain. And it will be involved in things like bipolar disorder, heavy aggression, mood flip-flops, things like that. So there's different types of bipolar disorders. That can also be something with if it's too high, you're going to have a lot more aggression. So this person on the dopamine level, a mood stabilizer for them wouldn't necessarily be the best thing. Okay. But if you go down, you can see that norepinephrine, epinephrine, those are stress hormones. So this is able to tell me, hey, is this person like really stressed out? Are they having a really low level of epinephrine, like their body isn't producing enough, or they're having so much adrenaline that they're utilizing too much of it, right? So this is essentially like adrenaline. Okay, is our body utilizing too much of it and we're not excreting enough? Then the next one we come down to is serotonin. So this is and tryptamine. So those are really important. A lot of people know serotonin, right, as the depression and or a happy hormone. That's your happy hormone. So this is valuable information because if somebody was to choose, say, a antidepressant, they would actually know, okay, I want to go on an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So you'll be able to understand where this is really powerful. So understanding that this person's issue is definitely a low amount of serotonin as well. But there's a couple things I want to show you here. The other thing is GABA. So the person's GABA is actually very good. So GABA and glutamate is another excitatory neurotransmitter. So glutamate, if there's a high level of glutamate, that you're gonna get way more anxiety, things like that. So your nerves will be way more excitatory. Same thing with the higher epinephrine and things like that. And if you were somebody who was on like an SSRI and then had like too much, you could also be in serotonin syndrome, which creates a bigger issue. Your body can flux into too much serotonin. Here, if we're looking at GABA, GABA here for this patient is really good, but GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. What does that mean? Okay, so nerves, think about nerves as little like electric shocks, right? Some nerves are excitatory, which means they like to go off more and they're easily excitable. And then there's some that are inhibitory, which means they like kind of quiet the system down. So GABA works to quiet the system down. GABA is really good to help calm the nerve. So this person I'm not guessing this person has a ton of anxiety because their GABA is high and pretty good. So, and their glutamate is low. So I'm able to see like what is going on within the patient to give them the best understanding of their body. So it's not just like, hey, I have a mental health issue. It's like, where is the issue coming from? Okay. So it's also important to understand that a lot of these amino acids there are precursors. There are precursors to these neurotransmitters. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Where are these neurotransmitters made? So you have a chemical imbalance. Well, where does it come from? Where do the chemicals come from? Right? We say a chemical imbalance. It's really not a chemical. It's a neurotransmitter imbalance. Right? Where does a neurotransmitter come from? Right? So we actually make some of the neurotransmitters in our gut. So if I will tell you one thing that is really powerful for you to change within your body to help with depression symptoms. Okay. But it involves the gut. This is really important to know because it gives us a piece of the puzzle of what and why is this going on with you. Okay, so from this, that gives me much bigger of a picture for somebody with depression than it does, um, you know, like a generic lab work. You're not going to get that kind of stuff with the generic lab work. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. Now, if that's helpful for you, please comment below, click the thumbs up if that's kind of like an aha moment for you, like, wow, that's awesome that you can figure out like all that information, right? And it's such awesome validation, like, hey, I'm not like, okay, something really is wrong. Like I'm not just like mopey and like crying and stuff like you. It kind of takes the edge off of that shame, right? Especially for a patient who's had, if somebody is in a position where they've had a lot of like an abusive situation, where they've had a lot of emotional abuse, or they've had a lot of shame thrown on them, that's a really hard thing. So they might be holding that shame, and then at the same time as that, and like whatever else might be going on, like the PTSD they might have, they also have biochemical and physiological problems going on that need to be addressed. So that's really, really important. Typically we want to like, in the medical realm of looking at health, we want to blame it on one thing, one diagnosis. Here's the pill, here's how you get better. And it's not necessarily the case. It's really not. There's so much more that we can do for people, than just throw a pill at them and play a guessing game, right? Um, so that's really powerful. Knowledge is power with that kind of information. So what I wanted to speak to you about a little further is the fact that sorry, my kids are screaming upstairs. Honey, I'll be up in a little bit. Okay, sorry about that. My babysitter's up there. I'm panicking on live Facebook. They'll be okay. All right. So basically what happens and how the chemistry gets affected is a lot of those precursors to those neurotransmitters and how they get billed is off of amino acids that the gut produces. So the gut is actually part of some of the actually good bacteria in your gut help to produce serotonin, dopamine, even some of the neurotransmitters of adrenaline. Those are signaled by the adrenals, so you can still have adrenal issues that create a lot of the depression, a lot of inflammation issues. But if you have poor gut health, that is so heavily linked to depression, emotional issues, things like that. I know for me specifically, if I have gluten, because I have celiac disease, if I have gluten, like the next day I'm like tanked lower. Like I don't know what, I'm like, oh my God, I feel awful. I feel exhausted. I feel depressed. Like I feel just like, and it's my body's way of kind of, it's not necessarily my fault. Like I can't help it. I'm having an autoimmune reaction, right? So it's important to understand like a lot of people who are trauma survivors actually do end up with anxiety, depression, heart disease, autoimmunity, cancer. But why? Why is that happening? Right? So if you are somebody under a chronic amount of stress, your gut is definitely going to be affected. If you are somebody who's under a chronic amount of stress, your immunity is going to be lower. You might have to go on antibiotics more because you have less ability to fight infection, right? A lot of our immune system is in our gut. So what does that do? That kills more of your good gut bacteria that's meant to build your good neurotransmitters, right? So really what we need to start doing is focusing on a lot of gut health with patients with depression, seeing what their brain is doing, seeing what their gut is doing, right? So that's really powerful. There's patients who come in with like, gut issues, and they'll actually come out and be like, yeah, I got a ton of brain fog and anxiety and stuff. Like I've had patients who come back and say like, wow, like I thought it was just me and the way I was, that I would be like just like constantly on all the time and like jittery and everything. And it's like once we started calming down some of the under physiological problems, it was like, oh, that's better. Why is that better? I thought that was just me. Like I thought I just had to, that's just who I am and what I had to deal with because it's been going on with that for so long. So it's really cool to see cases, that have, we can get into that knowledge. That's the kind of testing I do with patients. Because there's an aha moment there. There's like, shoot, this isn't my fault. And there's something going on here and I need to work on it and fix it. Right. So, before I give out any advice, I do have to just make that disclaimer that this is for informational purposes only, that I cannot prescribe specific things to specific individuals unless that I am working with them specifically on their case and I know what's going on with them. So please know that this is for informational purposes only and that it's great education for you and to get you to think about what could be going on with you. And if you do need help in this realm, please know that I'm able to work with people virtually and send these tests to them so we can get the answers that they need. Okay. So typically what I would be doing with a patient in this case is absolutely looking at what neurotransmitters are going on. If it's more things like serotonin and dopamine, I'm going to be more leaning towards, the gut and getting more of that commensal bacteria up. So doing a broad-based probiotic and prebiotic. So prebiotic is more like, it's called FOS, it's called fructose oligosaccharide. You want more of a big probiotic, at least 30 billion bacteria, live bacteria with FOS in it, okay? Now, if you guys want to get any of the supplements I'm mentioning, you can go to my website, drmisty.com. You can do appointments there as well as look on my dispensary. I have a lot of great supplements for that kind of stuff. So take a look there if you want to, but you'd be doing a broad-based probiotic with prebiotic, the FOS in it, as well as you want to try and get at least 8 strains. Now, this is typically for people who have been depressed and been on a lot of antibiotics. Typically, people who have a lot of bacterial overgrowth, this can kind of aggravate them a little bit. But for people in general who have had long-term depression, who've been on a long-term antibiotic, things like that, definitely need to get that bacteria back in the GI tract and get the chemicals being made again, get those neurotransmitters, right? So that's really important. The other thing is understanding that we have what's called a blood-brain barrier. And so the same cells that make up the lining of our GI tract actually create part of the blood-brain barrier. And so when there is any sort of breach, there can be issues that create inflammation and things like that, which can create problems overall for a patient, especially if they have like an autoimmune issue. Okay. So if you're somebody with like brain fog, swelling, chronic depression, chronic pain, things like that, there could be a lot more going on. That will also affect the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters have to kind of pass through to each synapse of the cell. They kind of travel down this long line they like kind of jump down the signals, right? So if you are lacking in the actual chemistry, it's not going to do as much. And if it's not getting transmitted through, it's also going to not do as much. So there's a couple different ways, the cellular function is going to be important. So one of the biggest things that I do with patients is a broad spectrum probiotic with prebiotic. The other thing is understanding that vitamin deficiencies, especially in these types of months, are big, especially vitamin D. So if you are somebody who you're not getting outside as much, you want to have vitamin D, D3 specifically, And a general amount is 2,000 IUs a day. Now, the recommended dietary intake will tell you that it's 400. That's basically what you need to keep from being deficient, essentially. Okay. So you want to take vitamin D3 at least 2,000 a day, preferably if you are down, if you're really deficient, and you can check this in blood work. Sometimes I just check this in blood work. If a patient's really deficient, we'll go to like 5 to 10,000 IUs a day. And you need to be having some sort of fat in with it because it's a fat soluble vitamin. Okay. So those are things that can be really powerful with treating depression without even having going on an antibiotic. The other thing that can help is kind of doing an elimination type of diet. So some of the common allergens to see if that you're getting a ramp up or inflammation response to that. Okay. So I would do one thing at a time, but that can be really powerful for somebody who's had depression. I know I've had it off and on for so long. And it definitely gets worse if I have flare-ups with my autoimmune stuff. And it's like, the things that can break it down are antibiotics, medications, and especially non-organic food. So this is one of the bigger takeaways. Non-organic foods actually have pesticides in them. So that's why they're non-organic. So organic foods don't have as much pesticide, or they typically, unless they're say 100% organic, they're at least 70% organic. Okay, so if you're eating foods that are organic, this is going to help with your gut health. Why? Because the pesticides actually break down a pathway in the bacteria. So now think about this. The food that you're taking in every single day that's not organic, you're taking it in, you're eating all these the pesticides that are within the food, or that the animal proteins that you're eating, right? And the pesticide is, as you're taking it and it's being absorbed, is actually stopping a pathway that helps to produce those neurotransmitter backbones. So it almost like cuts it off at the knees, this pathway, the Shikimate pathway. So it stops the pesticides that you're eating every single day. If you're not eating organic, you go to McDonald's and you're eating all their food or whatever, because you might be depressed and you might not have the energy to go out and get, or make your food or anything like that. So you might have low income, so you're choosing to do it that way, right? So it's so important to invest in food as your medicine, because honestly, like, it's not this whole mentality that we have, especially within America, is like almost like this back-ended health. Like, I'm just going to do whatever I want and then I'll take a pill and my symptoms will go away. Okay. We understand more and more that, health is an investment. You have to put into that jar every single day to invest in your future, right? So your body is like your main mobility. So you have to invest in your health all the time so that you don't have to go and patch it up later, right? And so those are those little things, like eating organic food is tremendously important when you have depression, because it can absolutely wreak havoc on your neurotransmitters. Okay. So again, if you are somebody who is struggling with depression, most of our foods are not organic, and that's not your fault. It's because that's how food processing is nowadays. That's how foods are processed. There's all these extra chemicals and pesticides and all this other stuff that are really terrible for our body. So one of the things that you can do, get on that broad spectrum probiotic with prebiotic in it, right? The FOS in it. At least 30 billion organisms. Okay. Vitamin D. And then think about switching to organic. Okay. So even if you do one of those, that is really helpful. And if you are somebody who is struggling and you've been on a multitude of antidepressants and you hate the way they make you feel and you're just kind of over it and done with it, message me. I will put the link below in the comments. Let's get you the help that you need and the answers that you need and deserve, and get you on the right track to feeling better, because the testing is so powerful. That is what turned my life around. Functional medicine testing, if it wasn't for that, I would still be in a very, very bad spot with my health. So I'm Dr. Misty Kosciuszko. Thank you so much for joining me today on Wellness Wednesday. Again, if you liked this, it really helps if you guys like, comment, and share. That way more people can get this kind of information. And right now, depression is very, very, very big. I mean, specifically right now. It was beforehand, before Corona, but now it's getting even worse with the amount of people being inside all the time and things like that, and some of the emotional aspects of depression. So the more people that can like, comment, and share, the better. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time and your investment in yourself, to listening to this video to help yourself. Um, I understand how frustrating, and I honor how upsetting that depression can be and how alone you can feel during those times. So please know that there is a person out there that understands how challenging it can be, but also knows that there's answers on the other side waiting too. So thank you again so much for joining in, and I hope to see you guys next week. Thanks so much.